It's June 18th, 2026, inside a packed Estadio Akron in Guadalajara, and the home crowd has just watched their team write the first line of history at this World Cup. Mexico have beaten South Korea 1-0, and with that single goal, the co-hosts have become the very first team on the planet to punch their ticket to the round of 32 at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Let's break down exactly how it happened, get our used and why this moment connects to nearly a century of World Cup history. Mexico went into this one already a step ahead. They'd opened the tournament with a 2-0 win over South Africa at the iconic Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. South Korea, meanwhile, had also won their opener, beating the Czechs 2-1, so this was effectively a battle for first place in Group A. For long stretches, it didn't look like Mexico's night. They started brightly, controlling the early possession in Guadalajara, but South Korea grew into the game and by halftime had taken over. The Koreans would go on to dominate possession for the match, and finishing with nearly 58% of the ball. But football isn't won on possession stats alone. 5 minutes after the restart, the moment came. Korean goalkeeper Seung-gyu Kim rushed off his line to claim a harmless looping ball and collided with his own defender, spilling it straight into danger. Mexican midfielder Luis Romo pounced, lifting the ball over the keeper and into an empty net. That was the only goal of the game. South Korea pushed for an equalizer and even forced a couple of strong chances late on, one brilliantly saved by Mexican keeper Raul Rangel, another heroically blocked by defender Johan Vasquez. But the score stayed 1-0. Now here's what makes this more than just a routine group stage win. This is the first ever 48-team World Cup, and the first ever edition to use a round of 32. That knockout round didn't exist before 2026, so it's brand new. So when commentators say Mexico are the first team in history to qualify for it, that's not hyperbole. It's literally true. Nobody has ever done this before because the round itself has never existed before. It's also a piece of redemption. Mexico arrived at this tournament still carrying the sting of 2022, when, for the first time since 1978, El Tri failed to escape the group stage at a World Cup, eliminated on goal difference and yellow cards after beating Saudi Arabia by not quite enough. That ended a remarkable run. From 1994 through 2018, Mexico reached the knockout rounds in 7 straight World Cups, a streak fans nicknamed the chase for the Quinto Partido, the 5th match, the one beyond the round of 16 that Mexico has still never reached. Coach Javier Aguirre, himself a player on Mexico's 1986 home World Cup squad, has now steadied that ship, and done it in the most emphatic way possible on home soil, ahead of schedule. Speaking of home soil, Mexico's relationship with hosting the World Cup is unlike any other country's. This is Mexico's 3rd time hosting the tournament, a record no other nation holds. They hosted in 1970, the tournament remembered for Pelé and Brazil's legendary team. They hosted again in 1986, when Diego Maradona delivered some of the most iconic moments in World Cup history at the very same Estadio Azteca. On both occasions, Mexico reached the quarterfinals, their best ever World Cup results both achieved at home. Now in 2026, Mexico is 1/3 of an unprecedented arrangement, co-hosting alongside the United States and Canada, the first World Cup ever spread across 3 countries. And that raises an interesting historical question. How do host nations usually perform? The answer is generally pretty well, but not always. 6 host nations across World Cup history have actually gone on to win the whole tournament, about a quarter of all editions. But there have been painful exceptions too. South Africa in 2010 became the first ever host nation eliminated in the group stage, going out on goal difference, ironically behind Mexico, who finished above them in that same group. Qatar then broke an even grimmer record in 2022, becoming the first host ever to lose its opening match, and the earliest eliminated host in the tournament's history, knocked out after just 2 games. Co-hosting specifically has its own story. The first co-hosted World Cup came in 2002, when Japan and South Korea split the tournament, and both nations massively outperformed expectations, with South Korea famously reaching the semifinals. That success is part of why FIFA was comfortable handing the keys to 3 nations at once in 2026. So, when Mexico becomes the first team into the knockout rounds on home turf, it's not just a good night for El Tri. It's the co-hosts immediately bucking the more recent trend of host nations stumbling early and instead echoing the success stories like Korea and Japan back in 2002. This wasn't the first time these 2 nations have met on football's biggest stage either. Mexico and South Korea last clashed at a World Cup back in 2018 in Russia, where Mexico won 2-1, a Carlos Vela penalty, and a milestone 50th international goal from Javier Hernandez securing the points, with Son Heung-min grabbing a late consolation for the Koreans. That victory kept alive Mexico's streak of never losing to an Asian nation at a World Cup. 8 years later in Guadalajara, Mexico made it 2 wins from 2 World Cup meetings against South Korea. Only this time, the stakes were even higher, with a place in history on the line instead of just 3 points. So, as the tournament rolls on toward its final at MetLife Stadium on July 19th, one line is already written into the record books for good. Mexico, co-host, 3-time host, and now the very first team through to the brand new round of 32 at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The question now isn't whether they'll make the knockouts, it's whether 56 years after Pelé and 40 years after Maradona lit up Mexican soil, this is finally the year El Tri reaches that elusive quinto partido and goes further at home than they ever have before. Follow us more. Good updates and news, don't forget to subscribe.